Good evening, everyone. Pearl and I were very inspired by Mei Lin's sharing last month on how God used her to minister to someone. It reminded us that some 2 years ago, we were also prompted to reach out to a total stranger, even though the incident happened under a very different circumstance. So my sharing this evening is not something that happened recently, but we feel that the incident was unusual for us. And I had shared that with our own CG members at that time. What happened was one of the connectors in DOMC contacted her one day and asked us to attend to a lady named Irene, to bring her to our CG meetings and to church. That message, the request actually came from Irene's friend in Penang, who happened to visit the DOMC that weekend, and the request was made at the visitors' lounge. Irene lived some 10 minutes drive away from us. That's why that request came to us. We had very little information about Irene other than that she was a cancer patient and she needed support. We tried to get more details from the church, but the church was unable to give us any more information. Meanwhile, promptings kept coming to Pearl to reach out to this lady and to see what we could do for her. So we decided that we would pay Irene a visit. After Pearl made a phone call to Irene that afternoon, when we arrived at her apartment and rang the doorbell, we waited for a long time for Irene to appear. When she opened the door, she told us that she had to walk very slowly from her living room with a walker because of a pain in her abdomen. We sat down and talked for more than an hour, and we learned that Irene had 2 grown-up children, a married daughter with a baby daughter in Hong Kong, a son who was under depression and living in the same apartment as her. She did not mention anything about her husband. Irene worked in a bank for many years until she retired. Then she joined a non-profit organization and worked for some years until she retired again. And this time, because of her stomach cancer. 2 things stood out in the conversation. First thing, we noticed that Irene had been searching for God in her own way. She told us that she was not a Christian, but she knew about God and Jesus Christ in her school days. She had been praying to God in this time of illness, asking for healing. And she told us that one day God spoke to her in her living room where she lived, and God asked her whether she would be prepared to give up her life for her son's life so that her son could recover from depression. We explained to her, our God is a loving God. Our God gives life, but he will not trade one life for another life. Second thing, we noticed that she had been looking for help and support. She told us that she joined one cancer support group once. She liked it. She found that they could share many challenges, even on food and diet. And she told us the leader of the group, the support group, and some members shared light of healing during the session. We realized that that was not a Christian cancer support group. So we told her that we would look for a Christian cancer support group. We prayed for her before we left. And we told her that we would come back and visit her again. On our way home, Pearl and I concluded that Irene was in no condition to attend our CG meeting. She needed special care and support. So Pearl called up her friend in SIB Church, which we knew had cancer ministry, active cancer ministry. Pearl's friend put us in touch with Pastor Stephen Lee, who was heading the cancer ministry. We told Pastor Stephen everything we knew about Irene. And immediately, Pastor Stephen said he would invite Irene to his cancer support group, which met once every 2 weeks. The following meeting will be due in 2 weeks' time. But he said he would call up Irene first to find out what her specific needs were. A few days later, Pastor Stephen and his wife visited Irene, and they led Irene to Christ. A few more days later, Irene was admitted to a hospital, and shortly afterwards, she fell into a coma, and a few weeks later, she passed on without regaining consciousness. Irene's son asked Pastor Stephen to conduct a wake service. Pearl and I were there to pay our respect, and for the first time, we met Irene's children and her husband too. At that time, we knew that the husband was estranged from Irene. Now, to sum up, we would like to share a few lessons we learned from this episode. Firstly, we believe Irene had been searching God in her own way, but nevertheless, God saw her heart and listened to her cry for help and support. Secondly, we believe God so loved Irene that he actually orchestrated a string of people to come to Irene. Her friend in Penang, connectors in DOMC, Pearl and I, Pearl's friend in SIB, and ultimately to Pastor Stephen and his wife, who led her to Christ. Thirdly, we realized that when we were prompted to reach out to somebody, even a stranger, we ought to act quickly. We were indeed very relieved that all the follow-up actions to reach out to Irene happened before she was admitted to hospital for the last time. And fourthly, finally, we were reminded of our own relatives who live overseas, who had backslided for many years. We pray to God that in his mercy, he will also bring strangers like he did for Irene, and will bring our relatives back to him. That concludes my sharing.